right. Doug,
I'll make a motion to seat Liz Faria for tonight's meeting, and then I'll have another motion in a moment.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I move that we seat Brian West.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going
Aye.
to put you on the spot.
We have to get in the minutes, right? Okay.
Did we vote? Aye.
Yeah.
Aye, yes, we did. Okay. All right, on tonight's agenda, we have Chris Raymond from TEC. We had a couple issues to talk about. You can sit or stand, whichever
Yeah,
you. There's
whatever.
that microphone works too.
You might be up for a while, so if you want to sit.
And if you want to pull the chair to that microphone, we'll just ask you to press the button to turn it on.
So there were a couple issues we wanted to talk about, like specific issues, and then if we can also just talk generally about information flow and what you guys, maybe we start there, like kind of walk us through the process, because I think we've had a lot of new people kind of lost sight of how all of that works.
Yeah. Like, how does it currently go? Or I guess what's...
Yeah, like
you know,
the types of things that you do, I think people generally know, but what reporting comes to the board or would come to the planning office. I think people are interested in the inspections that happen during a project, things like that.
Yeah, so when a project comes in front of the board, if it's in need of technical review, generally someone will reach out to request us to do an engineering review. We'll go through the plans, make sure everything's in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Town of Brentwood, as well as just general engineering practices. We'll produce a comments letter, usually go back and forth with the applicant until the plans get approved. Once it's approved and it goes to construction, we'll take the approved plans. Usually we'll set up a pre-construction meeting so we can meet with the contractor that's going to do the work. And then from there, we'll do periodic inspections of the project just to make sure things are generally in conformance with the approved plans.
Is there a
processing?
Yeah, is there a minimum number of inspections, or like how do you decide what and when to inspect?
That's very project specific, right? Not really a minimum. It really depends on how the project, what project we're talking about.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger projects, we'll try to get out there, weekly or bi-weekly. What we like to do is when we have that pre-construction meeting and we meet with the contractor, we'll exchange information, and that way we're in contact with the contractor, so we kind of know their schedule. We'll contact them at least weekly, depending on what's going on out there.
Okay.
And we try to make sure we're out there for some of the major milestones. If there's significant drainage infrastructure going in, or utilities, paving, roadway separating, curbing, stuff like that. We'll try to get out there to meet those milestones. And it's usually it's project specific, and the frequency kind of depends on our coordination with the contractor and what's going on out there. Sometimes we'll get a bunch of rain for a month, and the contractor kind of is only out there a few times, or they're waiting on materials to get in, and it can slow down for a few months, so we won't go out there. We'll just kind of wait until they, let us know that they're going back out there, and then we'll continue to inspect.
So
And
you've,
then,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
sorry, just on the reporting. So I know there was a question about how, does the town get copies of those? Do you keep a notebook for us, or how that works?
Yeah, we keep a record of them. I guess some of the process since we first started has gotten lost because our point of contact has changed so many times. Currently, there's no formal process. I think with some of the new projects, we'll start sending Mark our field reports on probably a bi-weekly basis.
Doug, you had a question?
Yeah, so my understanding, based on what you're saying, is this, you're doing an actual physical inspection while you're out there?
Correct.
Based on what their progress has been doing? So you, drainage, you inspect that?
Yeah, yep. Typically, we'll go out there for drainage or utilities, major utilities. We're not there for the duration, every single piece of it.
All right.
We're not out there full time. That would get very costly. So we'll just do periodic inspections just to make sure.
So in your communication with Mark afterwards, do you have bullet points of what you inspected at that point in time?
Our field reports do. Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I ask, he's not in attendance tonight, but it was suggested that if that was not the case, that it should be required on a checklist.
Yeah, typically our field report includes construction progress currently happening with some action items. But yeah, I mean, happy to send those to whomever the board and circulate.
I think,
Mark,
send him
Mark
to
is
Mark,
just the Mark,
yeah, and we have shared files now, so he can give us
Yeah.
access to a folder, so we can go
Absolutely.
in and.
What I would like to see is when you see corrective actions that need to be taken, the board needs to be notified of those corrective actions and what actions are being currently taken place to correct them.
Okay.
And I think that's where the disconnect comes in,
Yeah.
is that when I go out into the field and I find things that are not, that shouldn't be there and that they are there, and the board hasn't been notified of the changes in these plans, and then furthermore, the changes that have been made do not meet the requirements of the town of Brentwood, and I have to fish for answers as to what corrective measures have been taken place, I really shouldn't have to do that. You, as the town engineer, should be reporting to this board the corrective actions that are being taken on things that are non-compliant.
Yeah.
And that's the disconnect.
Okay.
How often does that happen, where you're seeing things that are changes from the original plan and/or not compliant with our ordinances?
I mean, on the projects that we've done to date, not very often. There's always minor changes in construction, small shifts in curbing and sidewalks and stuff like that. Very, very minor stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's major corrective action it's only happened a couple of times.
When's the last time you visited some of these sites? I know there's two.
Brian, you've got to go up to the mic.
There's a couple down on there's one on 125 and then there's River Run.
Mhm.
Have you been down there, and do you remember when the last time you were there?
Yeah, I think we had I don't do all the inspections myself,
Okay.
but we've had a representative out there this week
Which one?
to the River Run
Okay. And the other one, have you been out there?
in Three Ponds.
No, there's one, you know where Nietzsche Auto is?
Oh,
Yeah, 13 homes, I think. Okay. Yep, okay. Yep.
and this is just for the record. This is Brenna Heimly from TEC as well.
Oh, she owns TC.
What?
She owns a company?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it would be helpful, if you want to speak, to just come up to one of the microphones. That'd be terrific. Thank you.
Before we talk about specific projects, does anybody have any more general questions about process?
Well, I think just kind of to reiterate what Mark said, are you open to kind of either streamlining or sort of fixing those lines of communication?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we're here to help. We're here on behalf of, you guys, so if, we work at your direction, so if you guys want that stuff, absolutely.
It seems like there are sort of routine reports that you'd be sending, but then flagging things when there's a problem,
Yeah.
just so it's
Yeah.
clear that there's something that particular that we should look at.
Yeah, and we'll do, typically we do final inspections. We'll, develop punch lists for all these projects. And, corrective measures are typically minor. We'll walk the whole site with the contractor. Yeah, we can incorporate you guys on all those things.
Okay.
if you'd like. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think we need to look at your contract because I think it's out of date, right? We looked at that.
Correct.
Correct. So we can do that offline, but let's
Yeah.
work on that.
Yes, if you would like to create a new contract and send it to us, we will look it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think when we looked at it, we're probably looking for a little bit more detail. And I don't have my notes in front of me, but we can let you know what that is.
Okay.
Does anyone have a preference for which project we talk about first? There's Tanya Lane's.
Tanya Lane.
Okay. I didn't get to read this and now I can't.
Oh,
And
I didn't know if you wanted that submitted for the
I
record.
haven't seen it, but
Okay,
you can summarize.
okay. So,
So Tanya Lane came to our attention that they used plastic culverts in the driveways. There was a question about what was on their plan. So they had asked for a variance. They pulled that back. They decided not to do that. And then on the plan set, there's a note, but there's also, we're doing everything in compliance with the ordinances.
Right.
So yeah, do you want to let us know your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so the plans stated a note that said all pipe would be plastic pipe unless otherwise noted. So I guess there is conflicting notes there. We just get the approved plans when we go out there. We, try to see what they're putting in. It's plastic pipe, like the plan says.
But before that, you would have reviewed the plan set
Yeah.
against our ordinances. And I know, we do too, but
And I think at the time, though, there was a waiver, right? So we saw a waiver come in.
yeah.
And I think there was a gap there where we just, we saw that waiver was submitted.
They withdrew it, so,
And then that's where we had probably already done our review with the waiver submitted and then just never did a follow-up review once the waiver was withdrawn.
yeah.
I can't remember, this was quite a few years ago now, but that's my assumption of what happened.
Yeah. We'll have to, so that's another part of the process. We talked a little bit about the inspections, but this would be, on the front end when you're reviewing plans, that we make sure that it's very clear, because that's something that, the board votes on. So even if they submitted one, they may not get it.
Right.
So somehow we need to make sure that we're tracking that and
Yep.
in the process. What do you think about what's been installed and its durability?
At Tanya Lane,
Yeah.
honestly, it's the HDPE pipe is fairly common engineering practice in drainage today.
could you just move that mic closer? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's used all over. These being, very low traffic, driveways, residential driveways. I really don't see from like a durability standpoint there are any issues there. If this were the like main driveway for Tanya Lane where it connects to South Road, right, and that it was in the town road, I think that it would, want them to update it to be, you know, concrete pipe, as the regulations say. Yeah, I think from like an engineering standpoint, the small little culverts that, you know, go under each individual driveway, I really don't see an issue there, from an engineering standpoint.
Because I think there's two sets of concerns. One is, how did it happen, and how did this kind of
Yeah.
slip through the cracks? And then there's, when we get to the point of making a recommendation on accepting the road, we don't want to accept something, accept responsibility for something that the town's going to have to wind up fixing down the road.
Right.
And, because it's not to our
Mm-hmm.
standards.
Is there a mechanism that could be put in place where the homeowners are responsible for their culvert?
No, because that's in the right of way.
Right. But, yeah.
Suggestion
So is
was made, installing RCP head walls on the culvert ends.
Sorry, what was that?
RCP, installing RCP on the head walls on the culvert ends to reinforce it. Would that be beneficial? It was suggested by our vice chair, who
Yeah.
is our an engineer, and she seems to think that would be a solution.
Yeah. I think the thought with the HDPE pipe, right? Like the reason to use the concrete would be for durability, right? And
Correct.
structural durability for cars going over it, so the pipe doesn't, get crushed in the middle. So I think at the ends, there's no real, traffic or damage that could really happen to those. It's just seeing a little bit of water, maybe some debris. I think reinforcing those ends, you could do it. I don't know if it's necessarily gonna, do too much for you. It's just something else to maintain. But it could definitely be a solution. It'd be, I think it's a pretty small pipe there.
7 inches.
12-inch.
Yeah, 12.
Typically, we use reinforced concrete pipe and want the ends reinforced concrete pipe is for snow removal. Because snowplow drivers don't know where the edge of the road is, and sometimes they drive right off it. And it's that front tire that leaves the roadway and then crushes the pipe that ends up being an issue. So that's the theory behind using reinforced concrete pipe. Adding a head wall, would that strengthen it? Yes, it would. But I would rely upon Steph and Chris's expertise as to how to continue forward with that, because you will need that engineering expertise to reinforce you wanting them.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about what you see in other places and their ordinances and what's been installed? Do you see a gap there? Are there things that they should have done better? Even, setting aside for a minute that, the material that they're using, but do you see any other issues with it?
No, to be honest, HDPE pipe is used all over. We see it all the time. It's just from a construction standpoint, it's a lot easier to install, to ship, to install. I know there was a period, I think it was really hard during the materials crisis there, that it was just harder to get concrete pipe as well. So it's a very common material that's used all over.
Did you have any discussion with the builder, developer, whoever's doing construction, about their decision to do that?
No, like like I said, when we got the plans, it said,
Yeah,
plastic pipe to be installed. So as that stuff went, there was no, it wasn't abnormal to see that at all. So it was just
No.
they were going per the plan.
no discussion, yeah.
Yeah, there was no real discussion. It wasn't a field change that was done or anything like that. They
Yeah.
just went per the plan. The contractor
Yeah.
got the plan, they went per the plan.
Right, yeah.
That's what we saw too, and then it wasn't until later that, that was brought up.
We felt a little like it was, if that was done intentionally, like they asked for the waiver and then pulled it back and then went out and did it anyways. That was part of our concern and I think part of our concern in general that, we don't want to be seen as a town that you can slip stuff by or,
No, I think that was just, the note might have just gotten left on the plan.
yeah.
When the final plans were submitted and,
Glenn?
I've been very quiet,
To Tom.
and I wanted to be very quiet, but now I do have a couple things that I want to say. I think that there was miscommunication. I think that perhaps when the board voted not to grant the waiver, that is something I should have communicated to Chris, because he does not attend our meetings.
I thought they withdrew it, no?
Well, we talked about it, and the minutes show that when we were clearly going to require that they.
We
the-
would have
The
voted
minutes
it
state,
down, yeah.
we don't care what you do on your own land.
Correct.
But when you're dealing with land that's going to be right-of-way for the town, you're going to follow the standard that we have. So instead of having us vote no, then they said,
They
oh,
withdrew. Yeah.
we'll withdraw the.
Yes, that was the conversation, was we're gonna use plastic, we want to use plastic pipe on this portion of our drainage.
Okay, so.
And then it morphed into, it's not in the right of way, you can use whatever pipe that you want. And then it went to, okay, I'll just withdraw my waiver.
So the end result was, and the reason I'm saying this is because I do not look at the road sheets in a final plan, because we have an engineer who does understand everything that's written on those road profile plans, and I don't. So I looked at the site, the plan set, and the pages that I look at, because I feel they're my responsibility, had the note that we will comply with all regulations of the town of Brentwood. But it's very clear that on the road profile sheets, they stated what they intended to do.
Yeah.
I fully believe Chris would have no way of knowing that, because what he received was a plan package with a waiver request. So I feel culpable that once that waiver was not granted, that there was no reaching out by the town to Chris to talk about that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, although it saddens me, it doesn't surprise me that the developer didn't go out of their way to say anything about the issue, because there was substantial cost to them to vary from what they wanted to do. And by way of remediation, I've asked a couple of engineers that I've dealt with what the standard is that they see. And they were very surprised that our standard is reinforced concrete for driveway culverts. I don't care that they're surprised. That is our standard.
Right.
But in this situation, we have to make a decision what we want to do.
For clarity, those particular pieces of the plan set were not recorded on Mylars, were they?
No, they're not part of the.
They're not
recorded
part of the
plan.
Mylar
They're just, but they are very definitely a part of the final
plan set.
approved plan set.
Doug?
Yeah, just to kind of offer my 2 cents a little bit, going off of what Glenn said, because I was very interested to hear what you had to say, and I have some similar feelings. First of all, thank you so much for coming, and you know, I'm a lot less concerned about the miscommunication because I feel like that's something that we can fix, you know, going forward. But what does irk me a bit is that the applicant, they certainly knew that this waiver was not granted because they were the ones who withdrew it. And I always try to assume best intentions, but for them not to, you know, come back to us and say, hey, this happened, you know, whatever, for whatever reason, for them to just kind of, it feels like they were hoping maybe this would just never be noticed and that, you know, they could just kind of move on. And so going forward, I don't necessarily know what the solution is to that. I mean, I would hope that applicants would exercise common sense and act in a way that is in accordance with, you know, the desires of the board. But I also wonder if in the future, maybe there's some way that we can, you know, keep those lines of communication open in such a way that they would be, it would be harder for them to not share things with us if we were, you know, sort of in regular communication in the immediate aftermath of the project. I'm not saying we should like you know, be checking in on them for years, but like in the immediate aftermath of the project, you know, maybe it would be worth, you know, us kind of following up with them to make sure that, and we can frame it like, did you have any problems, and kind of ascertain from them if there's anything that sort of went awry. And if that happened here, maybe they would have, you know, been inclined to say, hey, you know, this happened and it wasn't really in accordance with what we had agreed to. And then we could have reached, you know, sort of an amicable solution.
Did you have your hand up? No.
Maybe
Okay.
no.
Um,
But I would agree with Doug. My feeling and feeling of Bruce, even though he's not here, purely intentional. That be between the waiver and what materialized. You can't not think that way. And I see you nodding your head, so you have to be a little bit in agreement. And we're irked about it too. And the mere fact that it probably is an oversight, correctable. One board member is envisioning reinforcing the ends. I don't know if we need to go to that extent. I rely on Steph on those type of decisions, but definitely when you were blocked out of that communication, somebody on the other end should have picked up on it, and they didn't. And as a planning board member, I feel a little used, I guess.
Yeah, I've got to say, from a process, I look at the planning function as a process.
Correct.
And as a process issue, if I look at this honestly, if there is a waiver on a road issue, and those waivers do come in with the application, if it doesn't get, if it gets denied, or in this case gets withdrawn, then as the person running the process, I should have contacted Chris saying they never got that waiver.
Yeah.
I didn't think to do that, mainly because we didn't deny it, they withdrew it, which meant that they were
Gonna comply.
they were going to comply.
Exactly.
Damn it. They were going to comply. And so, and I think we were, during all of this, we were at the end of COVID, and communication and inspections and activities between folks were either just getting back online or were not completely back online yet. So there are factors that play into this that have made it a beautiful, colorful show
Mess.
with poor repercussions.
Yeah. Have you run into a situation like this before where something was done that should not have been done? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, yeah.
We're obviously struggling with,
Yeah.
what our options are and what to do about it. So I just asking in case you have any precedents or,
Not like, not in this
Yeah.
instance, no, nothing similar to this.
Yeah.
Um,
did you have your hand up? No?
Oh, I might have been like Aaron.
Okay, well, we can move on. I think for the board's gonna have to talk about this more in terms of our options. We've got a
Yeah.
couple things on the table. One is to talk to the developer about a physical remedy, changing something there. Another is to, when we consider whether or not to recommend accepting the road.
I think there's a couple things that we really need to you need to think about as we move forward. Is A, we actually hold the people responsible. And the people owning those homes, they're not the ones responsible. So I think that's a super important thing to remember. And to whatever, and I'm not saying that our road standards really need to be looked at. I'm not negating the fact that these are the standards in place and they didn't follow them. But we really should look in the future to revamping those road standards. But whatever remedy that you do come up with, just keep in mind who is responsible and who is not.
Oh, and you made a good point about the plows. I actually had that happen to me somewhere else.
Well, they crush the end of the pipe and then it collapses and then the stuff piles up on it and it really is a
You
problem.
can wipe out your.
And it's New England and
Yeah.
this happens to plow drivers all the time and that's one of the reasons why
Yeah.
we prefer or require reinforced concrete pipe because
Okay.
you physically can't crush it.
Anything else on this one before we go to the next? All right. So the other one, it seems like there's a solution worked out
Yep.
for this. I think
The other
Sound-
one, is this the one along
Three Ponds.
at Three Ponds?
Yeah,
One you showed
drainage
me with
or
the
not Three Ponds.
River
River
Woods.
Run
Mhm.
drainage.
River Run.
Chris, please keep in mind, more information is better. You cannot send me so much stuff that I go, stop sending me so much stuff, Chris. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no.
So, but we're super sensitive about the situation.
Yeah.
So in turn, I am super sensitive about it not happening again.
Yeah.
And if that requires me driving to every one of these and going in with my plan and looking at them, that's what I'm gonna do. So the better communication that we have, if there's an issue, just send it to me and I'll disseminate that information. It's super critical and it's super important.
Yeah.
This is not a good situation for this board and they're not happy about it. So in turn, I'm gonna be out there looking and I want you to tell me before I go and find it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Everybody's being very polite. I think two people said irked, which is a lot for.
This
is a lot
is a
for
very
people.
active planning board, well, I think it is. We take the initiative to go out and look at the site, so it's not just one person looking at it, it's several people. And some are more knowledgeable than others when it comes to the RSAs and compliancy. And when it doesn't happen in the past, and this is the first time that I can think of that it's happened, it doesn't sit well.
No,
At
and
all.
I'd encourage all board members, come and get a plan, go for a drive, take a look. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good. It's helpful. Get you involved in the process.
But if the consensus was, okay, we'll end up letting it slide, then when it comes time to approve the road, do we say, we accept it with the exception of this particular item right here? If there's ever a problem with it, you, the homeowners, are responsible, or the builder, but you can't count on the builder because he may just go out of business.
The
or
builder's
whatever.
long gone.
He's gone. So
This
that's,
is, we're 3 years into this into this roadway being there. They're long gone.
That's why
So
I,
it's only the homeowner
Yep.
that's why I
that we'd be
stated.
penalizing
Yeah.
for purchasing something that they were told was approved.
Compliant, yeah.
So we should do something to, do something on the culvert to make it better than it is, or what we think it should be.
I want to look, can we do the river run? Because I don't want to keep Chris here all
Right,
night
so
as
this-
we
this
work
is an
out
issue. Yeah. this
the
is-
culvert issue. So, so the Mill Road project, can you just explain what happened? I read your memo, but just for everybody, like,
River Run?
what, River Run, sorry.
Yeah, I think,
Mill Road, River Run.
so this last spring, the contractor, I guess, had encountered an issue where water was ponding off the road, and it was, I think it was last April. I think snow melt must have been, a factor, and it was going into the roadway. From a landscaped area, there's a hill right next to the roadway. They decided they wanted to alleviate this ponding issue, for roadway safety, so it didn't pool on the road, freeze, and turn into, an ice rink right at this intersection. So to do this, they just installed a plastic pipe, tied it into the drainage system, and just to alleviate the issue. We had showed up. There was no coordination there. We showed up. We noticed this, just documented it, and then knowing that there's a lot of construction left to do there. But then they paused construction like a couple weeks later, I think, and didn't get started again until this March. I think we went back out there. So there was almost a full year of pause out there, which, it was functioning perfectly well. They had put that in as a drainage solution that they thought was okay. We documented it, and then the construction halted. So
It
Yeah.
seemed like they installed it as thinking it was a permanent solution because they blacktopped over it.
yeah. Oh, no, it's in a landscape area. So
No,
No, no.
no. See, this is what concerns me, is that you saw the ABS, the HDPE pipe
Yeah.
in the right-of-way. You know that that's not allowed within the town right-of-way.
yeah.
You just documented it.
Yep.
Didn't say anything to the people installing it or building it, and then they just paved right over it. So this is what my concern is: when we see things that are not allowed, we should immediately tell the builder, you need to remedy that.
Yeah.
Because now to remedy it, we've got to cut asphalt, potentially cut asphalt.
Yeah.
It's much better in a construction process when we see a mistake, we fix that mistake, and then we finish whatever you want to do.
Yeah. It was installed when we found it. when we
Right,
saw it.
but
So
the
it
picture
was-
taken shows the picture of the drainage structure, sorry, people, without asphalt on it in very rough format.
Yeah.
So right when that picture was taken, someone should have reported it to the builder. The builder could immediately install the remedy, and then construction moves forward.
Yeah.
I don't want, when I have to adopt a roadway, I use I as in Town of Brentwood, adopt a roadway, I want to adopt the best roadway possible.
Yep.
And if you have to cut a roadway and then install things correctly that weren't installed correctly to begin with, that breaks the integrity of that roadway. I would much rather see it fixed and then construction move forward.
Mhm.
So just don't document it, report it, and report it to me. If I have to go chase them, I will chase them.
And now that this was, I think, I don't think you were here yet. So
Right.
I didn't really know who to report to. We documented it, and then construction kind of there's
Right.
nobody else out there. There's nobody out there to rectify the issue. So
That to me is not an acceptable answer.
We've
I
got
don't
Glenn.
know who to report to isn't an acceptable answer.
You can always.
Report to
yeah.
Glenn, you
Yeah,
can
we
report it
certainly-
to anybody,
Yeah.
Um,
Formalize
the
those
chair.
processes.
anybody.
Yep.
Going back to projects and having them correct mistakes is not the proper path forward. The proper path forward would be correct mistakes as they go along to create a roadway that is sound and structurally sound and correct.
So I guess the concern is what would have happened if Mark hadn't seen it? So it was documented, but
Yeah.
were you talking to them about fixing it?
Well, so they just started, right? They just started back out there a month ago. So we have it documented. We have it in a punch list. It hasn't been adopted yet.
To fix, yeah.
Yep. So it was something that we were aware of to have the discussion, but we're a long ways. They're still out there constructing. It's the landowners right now. The landowner owns that road.
Mhm.
So it's right now that it's not up to the town to maintain that. It's on.
But
it's on the
do they
landowner.
understand that it
So-
needs to change if
Yep.
they
yeah.
want the road to be adopted?
Yep, absolutely, yep, yep, and I think I had forwarded a memo from the design engineer that, said that they're actively working to rectify that.
Okay, and
It-
what they've
it would've-
proposed,
It would have had to been, fixed prior to, adoption of the roadway.
so what they proposed meets our ordinance?
Yep. Currently, yeah, they're gonna replace that pipe with an RCP pipe.
Yeah, the remedy is super simple,
Yep.
but it's super simple to dig a little dirt and just put it in and then cover it back over. Now it's not super simple.
Yeah,
And that's kind of where I'm going with this, right? I don't want to get in a fight with it to adopt a roadway until they fix some things. I want them fixed as they go
Yeah,
along,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
the much better way of
Yeah.
constructing things.
And I don't think they have to go into the roadway to do this. The structure they tied into is right at the edge of the roadway. They can.
Right. I mean, I'm not an
get
engineer,
right to that.
but when we
Yeah.
remove grade from edge of asphalt,
Yeah.
we've now ruined the compaction. And then we have to put a pipe in and then put the dirt back, and we have to somehow compact that dirt back to the proper compaction that a roadway should be. It's just much more better and much more conducive if we just do it right the first time.
Yeah, and if we could have caught them doing it,
Right.
absolutely.
I want to avoid that conversation at the end.
Yeah. Yep.
other questions on this topic? I think this was gonna be we just got the solution, so it seems like that's been worked out. So if we fix the process issues, it seems fine, but I don't know if anybody has any other concerns about it?
One question on the road, is that a first coat of tar, or is that the final coat of tar that's on there that we're talking about?
That is
Is it the scratch?
That's
coat?
just binder.
Just the binder?
just the binder, yeah.
Okay,
So,
so at least it's not the top coat.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not.
they were top coat for a
yeah.
while.
So I do have one question, and this is to Glenn. In reference to Mark bringing up the fact that it wasn't on the plans, and then they installed this pipe, the mere fact that the contractor decided to put the piping in, shouldn't he, and the plans were approved, shouldn't they have come back to the planning board with showing the addition of the pipe?
They should have, honestly, they should have worked with Chris. I mean, in the construction of any road, there's frequently changes made to the final approved plan, but they shouldn't have done construction in any manner without talking first with Chris.
And it doesn't sound like that happened.
It
Right.
sounds like it absolutely did not happen.
Okay. That's the point. I was
But
trying to make.
that absolutely, changes happen all the time,
Mhm.
which is why we ask for as-built plans.
Mhm.
Because we want to have a plan of what eventually got put in. Because changes occur all the time. You get out there and you end up having to blast someplace that you didn't think you would have to. And there's just things that crap happens.
There. The
But
drain,
it should always happen through him.
right,
Mhm.
right.
Yep.
And And have you had that conversation with them so they know
Yeah.
now
Yep.
if anything else comes up that they
Yep,
should be
exactly,
talking
yeah.
to you?
And actually, they reached out yesterday.
Okay.
And the addition of that area of drainage does meet the drainage calculations for the retention area involved. That's an important thing to note.
I get that.
Doug?
So just, but before you wrap up, so first of all, I appreciate what a good sport you're being. I know that we're venting our frustrations with you. But like in terms of sort of constructive next steps, going back to Mark's earlier point,
Yeah.
do you feel like now you have a little bit more clarity concerning our expectations regarding communication and reporting things?
Yeah.
But I think that was a really important thing to get out of this discussion, is that we have some clarity in terms of the lines of communication.
Yeah.
I guess I would also ask Mark, do you feel that we've made some progress there in terms of clarifying that?
Yeah, absolutely. More communication is always better.
Yep.
It's just surprises. Nobody likes surprises.
Right.
This board needs to be updated on, I'll collect all information, update the board on changes, mundane things. I probably wouldn't report to them, but I think it's important that they as a board are aware of the changes that go on within a project.
Especially a big one like that. you
Yeah,
know, it's-
Yeah.
it's a small drainage feature, but all these little things are gonna add up to something quite large in the end.
Yep.
And I wanna get this ironed out before this project moves any further downstream.
Yeah.
So we can get this door of communication open, we can get the board involved in the small changes in the plans, and they happen frequently, as Glenn has stated, and we're all aware of that. I just don't want to go out there and find things that I know at first glance that shouldn't be there and not have that information already from you.
Yep.
I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. Mark,
Does
thank you for.
Does the landowner have any skin in this game?
Right now, yes.
I mean, he's hired somebody, and
Yes.
we're finding objections to the work that's been done. We could actually go to him and say, hey, this isn't right, and we can do a cease and desist or whatever we want.
Yeah,
That-
I think
and then
That's why we
got-
pay an engineer, though.
Yeah.
What?
That's why we pay an engineer. Chris is our liaison in between their engineer and us.
But I think in this case, we've got a solution worked
Yeah,
out. They are gonna fix it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and this property hasn't been turned over to the town yet, right? So
Right.
it's on the landowner right now to
Right.
Own and maintain anything that's been constructed until that.
We don't want to get in a situation where, like in other cases where, it's sort of the town against the people who live there who had no say and,
Right. Yeah.
then
Right.
their, a cost is getting pushed off on them. So, we don't want to have to make that choice because something was done wrong. We want to fix it now.
Yeah,
So I'm glad there's
absolutely.
a solution
Yep.
for this one.
We want to address problems as they come along.
Yes.
And have them fixed and accept phase one without a hitch. There's nothing worse than having to fight with a developer to fix things that
Mhm.
should have been done.
No, and-
along the way.
and they've been super cooperative once we kind of had our conversation, and
That's good.
they're happy to fix the issue. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'll report back once that has been done.
Okay. Liz, did you want to say something?
No, okay.
You're going to hold it in? Okay.
Well, I suspect that Chris is just a super nice guy, so maybe we just have to be the heavies or something, but.
So yes, thank you for coming
course.
and
Yeah.
sitting here patiently listening to our questions and responding. And we will work with you on the contract to get some more detail
Yep.
in there.
Yeah, feel free to
And
reach out.
look forward to continuing to work with you. And
Awesome.
And you'll be looking at the 3 ponds drainage
Yep.
and give me a sign off, we can get that bond.
Flood Mark's email.
done.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really are.
Be
nice
careful what you
people,
wish for,
promise.
Daily emails.
send Mark all the stuff.
I'll take it all, everything.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Chris,
you
you're a
guys.
good sport. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you coming. Thank you
Yep.
very much.
Is that seat hot? Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, next item, recommendation to the select board to adopt the Phase 3 portion of the Three Ponds roadway. So we have a memo from TEC from last November. And was this the one that there was a site walk?
Yeah, right, this was the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any issues?
Nope.
I have one question.
Mhm.
Sure.
This came up during the sidewalk. I don't necessarily think I don't see it as an impediment to us accepting the road, but I just want to make sure that like it's being addressed. The circle at the very end, it came up that there have been some issues with plowing,
Mhm.
with folks plowing snow into the roadway.
Yep.
Again, it doesn't preclude us from accepting the road, but I just kind of wanted to bring it up because that was the one thing that came up during the site walk. And just, I don't know if maybe there's a need for communication to folks in the neighborhood that, hey, this is our ordinance, you can't push the snow into the roadway. Or maybe that's not even necessary. Just kind of want to get other folks' thoughts about whether anything
Yeah,
needs to be done there.
where are they pushing it? So it's making the road narrower as they push?
That's my
Snow out to the
understanding. Is
center.
that correct? Or?
Right.
I think Wayne said that they get so much snow on the road
Mhm.
that you cannot plow it.
Right,
And there's that big circle at the end.
right, yeah.
And he had to, the way he described it, he had to go in and try to move it. He couldn't move it.
Right.
So he went around the other side, tried to move from there.
Mhm.
And he had to really, really work at it. And that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And when a snowstorm, time's not cool.
Yeah.
But they should not be putting this snow in the road.
Right.
If you do that on a state road, you'll probably get a visitor.
I guess that's why I'm confused is that, I mean, you shouldn't be doing that anywhere. So what's special about this little
There's no
road
place
that
else
they're
to put it from.
doing? Well,
Well-
you put it in your yard.
It's,
Yeah.
That's their problem.
Well, I know.
They get a driveway and it's their responsibility.
And you
It's
wind
not the
up with
town's.
some torn up grass and.
Yep.
Well, if I understand it right, this is a landscaping company or a plowing company that's doing this, because these people don't plow their own driveways.
Right.
This is
Right.
done for them. So there are, if I remember right, if you go down the road just a little bit and then you take that first right, that's where they can push all the snow. But it's taking it from way over here to getting it over there, and they're just taking the shortcut.
But
So-
that's
Right,
not
that's
an
not
issue
right.
for
Yeah.
the town.
Right.
Why was he plowing this if it's not a town road yet?
he actually wasn't plowing it. He was going out down there to clean out the fire hydrants.
Oh, okay.
But if it
Which
becomes
were
a town-
buried by the snow plow.
I think it was more like a safety thing for him. He goes out, we've accepted phase 1, we've accepted phase 2. He goes down there and plows anyway. He wants to make sure that the fire hydrants are open down the end. He went down there. So if you look at this plan set, and I'll just zoom in a little bit, probably,
And to
Yeah.
clarify, the reason why I bring this up is because once we do accept the road, this could become,
Yeah.
more of an issue.
Yeah.
right, so what they were doing is they were taking the snow from these driveways and pushing them right in, all the snow right here into the middle. Well, what ends up happening, as you know, in New England, when you do that for the first storm or two, it's kind of slushy and wet, and then it's 20 degrees out. So then this froze solid here in the middle.
Right.
And then they start trying to plow it higher and higher and higher, and then it just becomes a frozen mass in the middle of this thing. So he couldn't clip it. It was so frozen, he couldn't get his plow in here to take a chunk out of it because it was basically a solid chunk of ice here in the middle.
Hmm.
So what I told the homeowners association is, your snow is your snow. Don't put it in the roadway anymore. You're gonna have to put it, there's snow storage on either side of these driveways. Buy a snow blower. I don't, whatever you gotta do.
So is that island there considered?
Well, there's a 50-foot
Right
right-of-way, and I
away.
believe that's what this,
That's, yeah,
That's a do-
everything within that dotted line is our right of way.
is it this
So
line
we
here,
have-
or is it
Oh,
the
no,
dotted?
I'm sorry, it's the solid line.
It's a solid black
Right,
line
Right,
here.
solid line.
So
just-
we have the right to say you cannot put
Oh my
snow
God.
Right,
on
it's
that
not
island.
big enough, to-
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not big enough.
Yeah.
It's bark mulch, it's just basically like a little flower planting thing here and
Where's the
bark mulch.
hydrant?
But the fire hydrant is on the extreme. If you come
That's-
straight down Three Pond Drive, it's on the other side of the circle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know
Right.
where the,
Where C-24 is, or right about there.
Okay, so you already talked to the homeowners association.
Yeah, and I'm sure Wayne will double down this coming
Yeah,
fall.
when it's a town road, we simply tell them not to do it again, and then we fine them.
And the other thing that came up during the site walk is that, like, it's particularly important for this roadway to be clear because I believe the hydrant is a dry hydrant in the circle, if I'm not mistaken, which would mean that they would need
A pumper.
like an actual pumper. And so if the roadway is obstructed, that could be problematic.
Well, that's a good thing to
Yeah, it's a
explain to the homeowners association that,
Yeah, we'll maintain it like we do any other town road,
okay.
plow it. And I think once that issue is resolved, I don't think you'll have an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so no other issues with the road itself?
Nope.
I think so.
And you have a deed.
Yep, you have a deed reviewed and approved by town council.
Alright. So we just need to vote to make a recommendation to the select board.
Oh, the select board, yes.
I'll make that motion
Okay,
to recommend to the select board the acceptance of the road.
to accept phase 3 of the Three Ponds roadway. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm just gonna abstain.
Stan? Okay.
Post.
Opposed? Well, was there something you wanted to talk about?
Bruce and I drove through that area, and it happened to be raining that day, and he made mention that he didn't think the road was done properly only because of the puddling at the end of the driveways. Resident happened to be walking. We stopped and talked to the resident. It's not a concern now because it's just wet. During the winter months, it was huge coming out of the driveway, at the end of the driveway. They'd slide right out into the road. You know, you can take that for what it is, whether it was sanding or salt or whatever the case might be. But I got the impression from Bruce, and I don't know if it's overkill, that a little more attention to detail would have been the thing to do.
So the water couldn't drain off from where the driveway
It just
hit the
puddled
road.
at the, and that's not just one driveway that we were experiencing. Again, like I said, it was 3 or 4 on the way out.
That's strangely environmental issue that is not to be ignored.
Unfortunately, I'm not an expert when it comes to the driveway and how they should drain. And you're talking to an individual that has a driveway that doesn't drain, so. And yes, when it freezes at the end of the year, I can skid off the end of my driveway, but I do put sand down, so.
Well, they'll skid out in front of you when you're driving down the road.
Coming out of the parking. Oh, sorry.
Who's done?
Those houses in phase 1 and phase 2?
Three.
Phase
Phase
3.
Yeah.
Around a good meeting.
All right, well, we voted
Well,
and it passed.
well, if I could just ask a question,
Yeah.
because this is information that I didn't know. I'd be curious to hear, the thoughts of Glenn, Mark, and yourself and others about it, because if this is a problem, theoretically, as somebody who voted on the prevailing side, I could move to reconsider in light of this information. But I would want to hear from the rest of the board if that's something that we think is necessary.
I guess I would want more evidence and, if TEC's looked at it and they did everything sort of to spec, then I don't know what recourse we really have.
What would be the remedy to that? Now, in your book, there is what's considered a typical driveway standard, and you may go look at that diagram.
Well, we forget the name of the place. It's down off of, the road that goes into Exeter down there by where the milk place and the dam and all that is. But we were there doing runs of the territory, and they just said, no, that's not acceptable. the group that I was with, they just said no. And they did something to rectify it. And my personal conviction would be, like he just said, I would renege on what I just voted on. Reconcile, whatever you want to call it. And then leave it open until we investigate it further.
Could I ask a question? Just a parliamentary question, or not necessarily a parliamentary question, it's more of a logistics question. Hypothetically, if we were to reconsider and then lay this on the table, that would, then delay the select board's consideration of it. Are we on a time crunch necessarily? And again, this is hypothetical, if we wanted to take more time to examine this potential problem, my inclination would be to try to get it figured out before, so that it doesn't become an issue after we accept the road. So I guess my question is, if we were to table this for a little more time, would that would that delay adversely impact anything?
Yes.
It would. Okay.
I mean, not really, but
Not for the town.
not for the town, but it would.
It's been months for the developer, who I don't care about. That our process to accept a road is our process to accept a road.
Right.
There's no time clock.
It startles me that this is a finding when I'm looking at a sign-off letter from our engineer. So
Shouldn't let him leave.
When you say that, Glenn, what do you mean?
I mean, I'm startled that I'm seeing something that says the road is constructed the way it's supposed to be constructed, and the final wearing paving course is down, and he's satisfied with the road. And lay people are going out and finding flaws with it. That's concerning to me.
Okay.
So I would, if I were you, reconsider what
Yeah.
you just voted on.
Yes.
And say, the next rainstorm, our inspector, and whoever else wants to come, is gonna go out and look at the site.
So you were looking at driveways, right? But it's
Yes,
in the right of way?
Well,
In
if
the
it's-
town
if
right
it's
of way.
ponding at the end of driveways,
Yes.
then
It's
it's
in-
ponding
that-
at the junction of driveway and roadway.
Road.
And keep in mind, I'm not an engineer. I'm driving with somebody who's got much more experience than I do. And my personal comment was, I think it looks good. And that just set off enough that for the next 15 minutes, I heard all about it, and it shouldn't happen. And I don't know, is that overkill?
In your book, I'll say it again, and you can look it in there, there is a sketch of a typical driveway, and it will show you the elevations that should be there, so that does not happen.
But we're dealing with an approved plan that we're being told has been constructed to that approval.
Right.
Mhm.
We don't
So-
have a performance standard that says no puddling. We have,
Exactly,
uh,
so
That's a good
the
point.
best result for the board is to make sure they feel comfortable if in fact what they're going to do is recommend approving it recommending the select board accept the road. And if we're having evidence that there are flaws there, it's much better for that to be talked about before this board recommends it
yeah.
Yeah.
than after the board recommends it.
Would it be possible to go out when it's raining and get some addresses, and then we can send TEC out
I
to
would say
specific?
video.
What are you doing?
video.
What are you doing the next time it rains?
Whoever has their iPhone,
Watch
I've
Okay.
I've videoed crap in
Blood.
Kingston for just this kind of thing, so.
Okay.
But I was just thinking if we had, I mean, video's good, but if we had specific addresses,
Yep.
then we can give those to
No, that's
TEC.
excellent point.
They can go out and look at the actual
Be-
construction.
Because it could be the driveways we were looking at, and then additional driveways.
Is it possible they subsided, like they were constructed
Well,
correctly?
is it
with-
possible that it was right after the torrential part of a storm? The water puddles
Gathers at the
and
lowest
then
ebb.
settles, And the veracity of the rainstorm has a huge impact on how that all pans out.
Yeah.
And there's a design standard that gets exceeded all the time now, because 2 and 5 year storms mean nothing anymore.
Yeah.
What, 2 and 5 year storms, we're seeing the frequency of 25 and 50-year storms at those 2 and 5 year levels
Yeah.
because of climate change, no matter if people want to think that is happening or not. The storms are more intense and water happens heavier now. And so if
Which
it's a
brings us
problem,
back to
we
our
should-
road standards.
we
and
should
if
figure it out
yeah.
now before we say
Okay,
select board.
so
Yeah.
do you want to,
Yeah, so what I'll do is first I'll make a motion to reconsider because I vote on the prevailing side. If the board passes that motion, then I'll make a motion to table to the May 1st meeting, if the board would be amenable to that. So I'll make having voted on the prevailing side, I move reconsideration of the recommendation of road acceptance for Phase 3.
I'll
Just-
second that.
Just for clarity, he cannot withdraw the motion after it's been voted on. He has to make a motion to reconsider?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if
Okay.
it's a winter and you got 30 inches of snow on the ground, the water has no place to go
Well,
if you don't have good drainage.
in that instance, if you have that much snow, it doesn't matter. You haven't designed to that standard.
you have a pond because you have 2 walls of
I
ice.
mean,
Would
it just isn't the case. It's,
would it be
that
legal?
happens, and some winters are so hideous that you're just never gonna have
They
design.
just have drainage on each particular driveway, that's all.
But,
Would-
We have
but
motion
it's
and a
full of
second.
snow. Yeah, okay, so we have a
Oh, yeah.
motion and a second to reconsider. All in
But,
favor?
wait,
Oh.
Mark, did you have a parliamentary question?
Yes, would it be legal to say a motion to reconsider the previous motion, or do you want the whole motion listed within that?
Motion to reconsider the
Previous-
vote.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
say a motion
yeah.
to reconsider the vote.
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. And a
Okay,
second was,
all in
Brian.
favor of reconsidering the vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Everybody- Okay.
And I'll make a motion that we table this agenda item for Phase 3 of Three Ponds to the May 1st meeting, which I believe is our next meeting.
Hope we have rain by then.
I
Second.
was gonna say.
Yep. Are you going to designate anybody to go out and video?
Liz, second.
And if not, we can continue again if you
Yeah.
have to do so.
All in
Mark?
favor of tabling until May 1st?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Okay. All right, so in the meantime, get on your, text your friends when it starts raining. and
not supposed to rain for like a week.
Get out there.
And I was happy about that until now.
Yeah, but you don't believe those weather reports, do you?
Yeah.
Well, no, not really, but it does give me a. bit
Not
of
up
hope.
here, you
Do you
can.
have an idea of the addresses by any chance? Like if he brings up
But it
that.
was in
No,
the-
but
it
if
was
you
in the
bring up the
phase
map,
3.
if you
You
bring
can
up the map,
ballpark it,
I
maybe.
can give you an idea. So
Yeah.
you're down at the culvert, you make the turn, you're heading back. We met the gentleman, no,
You want me
go
to,
down.
I can start out at the beginning. If
Nope.
this,
No, you wanted it at the bulb, right?
Yeah.
Where you were was where you wanted it.
Right there.
Okay. So at the culvert, you make the turn, you go into it, come around, and you're coming out at 9 o'clock and heading back. 1, 2, 3, probably the third or fourth house is the resident that we spoke to, and he
like right here?
yeah, and he made mention about it, and probably about the third house down on the right-hand side is where Bruce identified the puddling, and I believe right next to it, going forward, to your left, yep, that one as well, and which my comment was, okay, but he had a concern about it.
Yeah, so maybe that narrows
look
it
at all
down
of them.
enough that you can just let Chris know that, when
In
it
that
rains,
area?
to go out and look at that section of the road, the driveways.
I'd rather.
Yeah, I would
rather
say
focus them.
section.
Say, hey, can you go look at X through X?
Yeah, I'd rather just say, look, when we get rain, go and look at Phase
Oh.
3.
Yeah, Yeah.
You're an engineer, you should be able to see
True.
and understand what a puddle is.
yeah.
True.
Yeah, that.
I wish he stayed.
I feel bad.
I did not,
Mhm.
I did not anticipate that. Okay.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Newsletter. You have an
Oh.
update for us?
Hmm.
You submitted?
That is
Next
the,
article.
Oh, wow, we got a half page.
Why are you sticking to my thing? That is the, oh, that's why. You have a mouse failure. That is the article that you will see in the next Brentwood newsletter.
Nice.
So what ended up happening was I submitted just the flyer to be printed. And then Crystal sent me that little blurb at the top there.
Mhm.
So I worked with the newsletter to incorporate them together.
Looks good.
And I think it looks good.
Yeah,
I
thank
love
you.
it.
You know, it was important that her blurb make it in there, and the flyer as well, because the flyer has not been in the Brentwood newsletter yet. But I think it's really important that the people who read the newsletter know the topics that are going to be discussed.
Yep,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's true.
Because you
Yeah,
don't
folks
get
can
that
do
from the
some
flyer
research.
itself.
Yeah, 100% agree. Thank you for doing that.
Very important question, though. What will the refreshments be?
Did Goody Coles,
I don't
Okay.
care whether it's Canadian
my
or
thing.
American.
That'd be our whole budget.
Yeah,
If we could
really.
go to
Just want
Kohl's.
some potatoes.
Work, I'm putting it on my thing, work on refreshments.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, you said that you might have an idea.
Yeah, well, I was gonna call Goody
Open
Coles
bar.
and see 75 people, what the cost is.
For larger orders, that might be a little better.
For,
Yeah, if
for a community meeting.
it's $18.99 a pound.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's
Well, we have $1,000, which
But
you were
I'm
correct.
thinking he's a good corporate neighbor.
If you have any ideas who else I should try, if that doesn't work out?
I was thinking cookies.
Huh? You're just coming for the cookies.
We also have Lindy's as an option too.
Okay.
so what type of food?
They do like pizzas and sandwiches and salads and
Yeah, we were trying to think out of the box a little bit,
Yeah, that's
offer something that
out of the pizza box.
Glenn would like.
Yeah.
Sounds a
I
little-
was
coming,
only trying to
right?
be funny.
Are you coming?
I expect to be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
What would you like?
One note on this and on housing in general, I think it's incumbent on all of us to talk to people we know, encourage people to come, push back against misinformation. I think there's some misinformation starting to float around or some misperceptions about what we're trying to do. I think we're trying to be 100% transparent, be responsive to what we've heard from the whole community and the surveys and people who have come in and talked to us and everything.
Yeah.
We're not trying to do anything radical. We understand that people want to preserve Brentwood to the extent, possible. We don't want to do much in the core residential area. That's, people want that to remain.
Because I do want to do something radical about multifamily.
Right. So but that's not necessarily that core area, but we
Correct.
do want to we want to fix the multifamily districts. We want to allow some mixed-use development along 125 and commercial areas. Things that we think will provide a little more flexibility. Again, we don't have water and sewer, so we're not going to have huge developments regardless. I've never heard anybody on this board or anybody in town say we want to be like Epping or Plaistow or any other community. I think that's very clear. But there were a few things, people would like a little bit more in terms of amenities on 125. People would like to use their property to, have an ADU. We need to think about what the state may do regardless to make us
Mhm.
do things. And we need to recognize that property owners may have something that, they want to do on their property that's allowed under our ordinances.
We can't
And
do Airbnb or something like that, right?
Sure you can.
Can we do that?
Right
Why
now,
not?
there's no prohibition.
you
from it.
said to
There's no
throw that right in, right in the middle of my speech.
Except the homeowner has to live in the primary residence.
I didn't interrupt your speech, someone else
Correct.
did. I just
Sorry,
answered
Sarah.
it.
I know, and with the
I'm
Airbnb
sorry.
thing.
Not for short-term rental, we have no requirements for it.
So you could make an ADU, then you could say, okay, I'm gonna hire somebody else, they can come stay in my house, and I can have the ADU, and somebody can stay there, and I'll live elsewhere. You can do that.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well, one of them has to be owner occupied.
Right, no, if you're using an ADU,
Yep.
then the owner has to be in one of those two places.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And if that person opts to move, what do you do?
What person?
The owner.
There's always gonna be an owner,
Okay, but if he's not living there,
then he can't have the ADU.
so you just say, okay.
You can't rent them both out.
But if he already has, and then you find it, I mean, you just say, okay, you gotta move, you gotta move.
Cease and desist.
That's
Yeah.
what you would do, is
You're
you're
non-compliant.
no longer compliant with the zoning ordinance.
Okay, I'm just, both parties. Good, okay.
So I had a really quick comment, but first, Kristen, I don't
I'm
think
so
you were quite
sorry.
finished.
Sorry.
You were on a
Just
roll.
popped in my head.
Passion speech. No, in all seriousness, I understand that people have concerns, and I expect and want people to come and ask good questions. I just don't want it to become unnecessarily negative because of misperceptions or because people think that we have some agenda, because I honestly don't think we do. We're really trying to we're trying to meet the law.
Right.
We're trying to be responsive to what people want in the community. We're trying to protect the areas that are important to people and trying to be responsive to some housing needs
Mhm.
within what fits with Brentwood's character.
Very
Speech
well,
time.
very well said.
Yeah, no, that's
Doug.
good.
And just one thing I want to add, because I really appreciate you saying that, Kristen. Like, as we're talking to neighbors and inviting folks to this event, I think it's really important to make clear that, like, of course, like, we have ideas, but our main goal is to be facilitators, and that these ideas are going to be led by the people of Brentwood.
Correct.
That we're not looking to take a top-down approach here. We're doing the exact opposite. We want to bring people in and have the citizens of Brentwood be the ones leading with the ideas, and we're here to facilitate that process.
I think the one challenge that we'll have is that we need to comply with the workforce housing law. So we need to do something.
Yep.
And we don't want to be in a bad position because,
Which we are now.
And-
we are now, because the town voted it out.
And we'll also have to comply with whatever state laws end up getting signed into law.
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
fall.
the ADU question may become moot if,
And the commercial development in residential zones could also be done by the state.
we can
It
do
won't,
that
won't
now.
become moot because we want to have design standards. And if you don't have any design standards in place for an external ADU, then I believe, Glenn, that they can just do it by right if that legislation passes. So Brentwood has been really good about being ahead of the curve. We had an attached ADU ordinance already in place before the state of New Hampshire. Sure.
25 years before.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
I
ahead of the
mean, a
curve.
generation before
Yeah.
the state told us we had to fix ours because it didn't match theirs. We had it already.
Oh, it's angry.
Is
Glenn.
the state
Right
still
there.
looking at multiple ADUs and properties?
They are, the bill in its current form, and it'll probably be amended, the bill in its current form would allow detached units, but I believe it would still be limited to one, that you couldn't have like an attached and a detached.
Okay.
Now, I don't, like, I'm not 100% sure, but that is my understanding based on the most recent version of the bill that I read. But we'll get more clarity during the public hearing process in the Senate. But I believe that the way it's written is that you have one ADU by right, and that one ADU can be either attached or detached.
Meeting the requirements of the town.
Right, and because the current law, you're allowed one by right, but the town has discretion over whether they allow detached units.
Glenn?
Well, the way it's written is you can't have design standards.
That is true, actually,
Unless
yes.
you also have them for the main house.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Which
Yeah.
isn't,
Which
Okay.
I
Gonna
don't think
happen.
anyone does, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Effectively, they're saying, we don't care how you feel about making the ADU look like the house. That doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, I thought you meant standards like in terms of like wetlands and stuff
Oh,
like that.
Yeah, that still has to
Right.
fit with.
No, the
Big
aesthetic
complaint.
standards that the bill does limit that, although I will say that if anything is going to be amended in that bill, I feel like that might be one of the things that they tweak. I don't know that for sure, but it just strikes me as something that the Senate might play with.
That would be good. I think the other challenge that we have is, maybe not, maybe I'm overblowing this, but the reality is, and I've said this before, when you drive around, if you see an empty piece of land, if it's not in conservation, it can be developed, and we can't buy it all. So I know people are upset that more, there are more houses, but we can't, and people have come in here and said, stop, stop everything. We can't legally stop everything. So helping people understand what we're trying to do is be proactive and be planners and try to steer things in a positive direction for our community, but we still have to operate within the law.
Is the state gonna have some person that goes out to determine whether Brentwood has had enough ADUs put in?
No,
during this
there's
time?
there's no requirement. And they've done estimates of, like fair share of housing, but they're just,
I mean,
it's nothing
It's
enforceable.
entirely possible that a lot of people would say, yeah, and maybe
Yeah.
there's not enough people, and I don't know how you would
There's
do
that,
it.
yeah, there's no outcome measure, but
Yeah.
we would have to
Okay.
allow for it.
Yep.
All right, done with my speeches. Minutes.
If it's appropriate, I'll make a motion to approve the April 3rd minutes and work session.
Do we have a second?
The April what?
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
minutes.
Second.
Hmm.
Well, I was at the work session, but I wasn't at the minute, so.
Did you read them?
If you read them, you can
No,
vote.
I watched the thing, so.
Oh, you can definitely vote them. All right,
If you read the
Um,
minutes, even though you weren't.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? All right.
And I just had one question about the sidewalk minutes. Not that I particularly care. I'm just curious. Next to my name, it says IS. What does that mean?
In shorts.
Oh, in shorts. In shorts.
Right.
I love it.
I told you that I was gonna put that in the minutes.
I love it.
And I was wondering who was gonna catch it.
I love it.
And I completely forgot about it.
I
until
love
right
it.
now.
I will happily make a motion
You're
to.
gonna leave that there?
Yes, I will happily make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
You can't be bragging.
Oh,
We have a
watch me.
second?
I told him it was gonna make it in the minutes at the sidewalk.
No.
I will.
All right, Brian second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It was really cold, and you were out there in shorts and
It
t-shirts.
was great New Hampshire weather.
Something wrong with you.
I said that to him at the RPC meeting.
Any other business?
Just one brief thing. Just wanted to provide an update on RPC. We had a meeting last week. One thing that we voted on that was very exciting. It's not necessarily Brentwood related, but we voted to approve a project to fix an intersection in Exeter. It's the intersection of Front and Railroad Ave. It's a really terrible intersection. They're gonna, and I don't know exactly when this project is gonna start, given the budgetary situation we're in. But what this project is, it would be adding a sidewalk to the other side of Railroad Ave to narrow the road a little bit, so because people are out of control in terms of the speed. It would narrow the crosswalk a bit, and they're also gonna be adding one of those little ramps onto the crosswalk, because right now, if you're in a wheelchair, it's just not an accessible sidewalk. So there was that, and then we also voted to approve the safety action plan for 2025. And we've talked about this a little bit in past meetings, and Doug can speak to it more, but it sets goals and benchmarks in terms of transportation safety, and sets targets to eventually get to 0 road deaths. Of course,
Fatalities, yeah.
of course, that's the goal. And so we'll keep everybody posted on
Survey.
how that goes.
The survey?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and the survey. So there is, let me see if I can,
I think, did you send that around?
Yes.
Did you forward that?
yeah,
I did.
sorry, I'm trying to find it, but
Oh, I did see that.
but there, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding it, Doug. Do you have it by chance?
It's on my table. Could, anyway, there's a
Did
general
you send it
survey
to me in
for,
an email? Did one of you send it to a survey in an email?
Yes.
Oh,
Is it
okay.
For the regional master plan?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because they
Yeah,
sent that to
this is-
everyone. The RPC sent it to everyone.
Oh, okay, perfect.
No.
The-
So fill
the-
it
They
out.
sent
yeah.
it to all communities, all planners, because I got it 3 times.
Okay, terrific. And so and so I believe the survey is May 15th to start, or is that the close of
I believe that is the close.
the close? Yeah, so close is May 15th, which ironically is the
Yeah,
day
it's
of
open till
our,
May 15th.
yeah.
Takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete.
All right.
It's worth looking at.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
just on a side note, you had a quick conversation with Tim about the 10-year plan on the Brentwood.
Yes, yeah, so,
Just bring us up to date.
yeah, so Tim, had a chance to talk to Tim a little bit, and I told him that Steph was able to give us a lot of clarity on the process, in terms of how the order of the projects were decided. Tim seems rather optimistic that our project could qualify for some of these grants, and that would help accelerate the project happening more quickly. And so, as we talked about last time, that's why they made the decision they did in terms of where they ranked the projects, because the Plastow project, he was saying they didn't really think fit that bill. And so, he's been, obviously very open and honest with us about it, and answered our questions. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that this project will be eligible for these grants, and that we'll be able to get the project done in as timely a manner as we can. Doug, did you have anything to add to that?
No, but one other thing Tim did note at the meeting is that without ourselves being Brentwood and another town, we're very active with communication and requesting grants and participating, and he appreciated that.
Nice.
So,
And we have a lot of advocates on our side. Of course, Counselor Stevens has been somebody who has really gone to bat for us. And so, certainly want to thank her for that. And,
Yep.
having her in our corner is a big boost to us.
Great. Well, thank
So-
you both for
I have a
participating in
question.
that.
So I know that some of you are working very hard on the South Road, whatever.
10-year.
When did that, yeah, I'm totally opposed to it. I live on South Road. I think what they've done has really been helpful, what they've done so far. But when did we decide that that was something that, did that ever go out to people, or was that just decided here?
There was a public hearing that DOT did at the rec center.
Yeah, I was there, but
Yeah,
yeah.
when did
It's a
it become a priority for the planning board, I guess?
Yeah, we have talked about it. I don't know specifically when, but we've talked about it a number of times.
Well, I know the planning board has.
But
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe at the DOT public hearing at the end, the select board did vote on the interim solution, but then also they voted to endorse the long-term
That's correct.
roundabout. So the select board did weigh in.
And that's really been driven by the Rockingham County Planning Commission,
Right.
who works in concert with the state of New Hampshire for the 10-year plan.
Oh.
So we've discussed it here, but
I know,
really the
but
driver is
that's-
your representation to the Rockingham County Planning Commission.
It's
It's
definitely
Rockingham County Planning Commission.
it's
Rockingham Planning
definitely
Commission.
bubbled up on community surveys too, the safety
And statistics.
on 125 in general and that intersection specifically.
And even though it's on that plan, doesn't mean it will get done. So,
And the design, that's DOT. They're looking at what they think is the best solution.
I'm just wondering how that would also, jive with if they put the municipal complex of the police station up at the rec. That's gonna be a whole nother problem turn. there.
Yeah, I don't know.
One problem at a time.
And I had one other just question. You had sent something out, in the, you know, pile of stuff that we get before every meeting. And there was one thing about the people talking about the cluster developments. And there was something in there that said you might want to consider, because it would enhance, you know, some conservation, calling it a conservation development. And I thought that was a horrible idea. I thought that was kind of like a, you know what I mean? Like,
I've put that in a folder and I'm saving that particular document. that
okay.
For conversation on our next meeting
Meeting,
would be
okay,
May
okay.
1st.
Because I
I was
was
gonna
like,
ask you
that just
about
seems
that,
like
yeah.
kind of underhanded to me.
Well,
The whole point of a cluster development and the surrounding land, the buffer that's included in that would be to conserve land. It's a buffer to, a non-disturb buffer for the preservation of wildlife,
Yeah,
really.
no, I get it, but I
Mhm.
think there needs to be, you know, cluster slash, like, it just, to me, it sounded like a
yeah.
way
I
to
mean,
make
that's
it more palatable.
exactly the kind of stuff that we want to share with them, because
Mhm.
what they're sending is 100% draft.
Yeah.
Like last time we talked about, they had numbers in there, and we said, you know, let's not have any firm numbers at this point. We
Right,
just
right.
want people to,
Just to- it just
discuss
gave me
that,
left a
so-
bad taste, because when I think of
Yeah.
conservation, I think that there's nothing on it, you know?
I mean,
But I think
there aren't,
quarter-acre lots. I think it had quarter-acre lots on it, on the proposal that they had at the end of it. I mean, they were small lots,
No.
but it
Yeah,
had
that's-
large conservation pieces of
Yeah.
land at the other
I
end.
mean, I don't mind if they, like I said, if they hyphenated it or something,
Right.
but it just seemed to, as a way to make it palatable, and I didn't like that at all.
well, I think there's some disconnect between a cluster development doesn't have any more homes in it than a regular subdivision. The first thing you have to provide the planning board is a proof of concept plan that proves that.
No, I get that, I know all that.
Right. So really, bringing those houses close together and conserving the land around it, the word conservation really fits. And there's a disconnect between that. And I think it's trying to bridge that gap. When they look at those houses close together, the perception is those homes are too close together, but they don't look at the grand view of the development and say, wow, look at all the land that doesn't have any homes on it. And it's trying to bridge that gap, in my humble opinion.
and I know that RPC identified that as a potential opportunity, but I don't think it's not my top priority. I think, you know, we've got the ADUs and the mixed use and the multifamily district. We've got a lot of other things to work on, so.
The only reason they pointed it out is because it's a trend that's happened statewide.
Mm.
Just last year, Kingston changed they never called it cluster, they called it their innovative zoning ordinance. And they changed it to their conservation subdivision ordinance,
Mm.
simply to make it better understood what the goal was of the ordinance.
Yeah.
And it's been happening a lot, and so I'm sure because it's such an easy change,
Yeah,
with the perception that it better describes what goes on, lots of people are doing it.
I believe this is the document you're referring to.
Yes.
I haven't read it, I just threw it in the file.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, but
on.
we are gonna talk about that next time, maybe?
yeah, and I think, you
5-1.
know, we're gonna put things out to public vote, and I want to make sure we don't overwhelm, you know,
Right.
we don't want to put out too many things at once. So we're gonna need to prioritize.
Are you
And
talking
part of
about
that-
for the housing thing, you mean? you're gonna
No,
put-
when they, like, so all we're doing is coming up with the ideas and developing ordinances with public input, but then it all goes out to town vote too.
Right, right.
So-
Will we have maps there that show where the different, like this is, you know,
I think they were gonna,
mixed use, you know,
do
that kind of
that,
stuff?
yeah.
This is mixed use, this is commercial.
Yeah,
this
it's
is-
right in
but I
your
think
vote.
for May
No, for
15th,
for that thing,
they were
yeah.
gonna say like, that, you know, we're talking about this, changing this ordinance, and here's where
Right.
that
Yeah,
Right.
would
that would be
apply.
great, with big
Yeah.
maps and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Going, what?
sign the Mylar.
Sign the Mylar. Okay.
If now's the appropriate time, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
That's your favorite line.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mike?